every time that I've ever worked with Hulk, man, he's been easy as Sunday morning. Now, no different than any other talent. They're going to come up and say, hey, man, I don't feel that. And I think it just comes with how you deal with that from there. I never would go into a situation and say, this is what we're going to do, without having a B and a C plan behind that. You know what? I don't really feel that right now. Okay, how about this? What if we got to it this way? And sometimes by having that B and that C plan, you may be able to bring them back around to the A plan to say, well, wait a minute, that might be a much better idea than I originally thought. Yeah. But, with Hulk early on in the 80s, man, he dealt with Vince. And they got together and they mapped things out. And sometimes it was great, sometimes it wasn't great. But they had their ways of working it out. When Hulk came back in 2000 and stuff, I worked with him primarily. And I got to tell you, he was pretty easy to work with.
It was difficult.
Again, I never went in with that, this is what you're going to do and this is it. It's this or the highway. I never went into anything with anybody like that, except Ric Flair. But, no.
Well, that's because I always said yes. I didn't even ask you. I just assumed I was doing the job.
Yeah. No, but I always would go in and say, hey, here's what we have in mind. What do you think? Because he's the one that's going to have to do it. The talent's the one that has to go out there and perform it. And if they don't feel it and don't feel it's right, I'd like to think that they'd say so and, make it right.
Was there somebody you were working with back then who was difficult? Since everybody always says Hogan was the most difficult, but you didn't really experience that. Was someone difficult that you can remember?
Speak ill of the dead, but Warrior could be difficult. Randy Savage was challenging. I don't know that Randy, I've heard horror stories about Randy being difficult, but I always got along with Randy too, and it was once you talk it through, he was fun, but he was challenging because he would pick everything apart.
Yeah.
But it was some guys would do that, and some guys, and then there are the guys who just go, okay, whatever you want, and go do it.
Hello.
Oh, we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to hear my name at the end of that sentence.
No, you know what? But Rick, seriously, you would speak up.
Yeah, but I never said no. That's why Hogan made $25 million and I made $500,000.
No, I think you sometimes were too giving, but also at the same, you would speak up. You spoke up to me.
No,
say, hey,
let's get things clarified. I would say to you, Bruce, how long have I got to pull this off?
Yes.
10 minutes, 30 minutes, 5 minutes?
Because you looked at it as a challenge a lot of times, too.
Yeah, but I don't think that I can honestly say that about myself, with the exception of not getting along with Eric and Russo, at different times. And Russo just, I think Russo we got off to a bad start because he knew that Cornette and I were friends, right? So he just said to me, I know you're not going to like me. And I said, why? He said, because we're good friends with Jim Cornette. I said, what's that got to do with you and me?
Right.
That was our first conversation. I'm not kidding you. So next thing I knew, I was buried out in the desert somewhere.
Well, let's talk about Russo a little bit, Bruce. He gets a lot of credit for the Attitude Era stuff, but the comeback is always, well, he needed an editor. You saw that in WCW. Vince Russo needs an editor, and Vince was an editor. What was your perspective at the time?
Well, we all had editors, and that editor was Vince McMahon. Nothing got through, nothing got approved or killed without Vince's blessing, Vince McMahon's blessing. And a lot of the stuff that was done was Vince Russo was a different voice pitching to Vince McMahon. He may have been pitching a lot of the same old, tired ideas, if you want to call it that, but it was a different voice, and it worked. But at the end of the day, you've got one guy in charge there. The buck stops at Vince McMahon, and he ain't afraid to step up, and kill something or endorse something. So that's the big difference. It wasn't, it wasn't me. It wasn't Vince Russo. It wasn't Brian Gewirtz. It wasn't any of us on our own. It was Vince being able to take those ideas and either let you run with it, edit it, whatever it is. But he's the gatekeeper, and nothing's going on television without his blessing.
Yeah, I said that the other day. Make no mistake, whether it was Bruce or anybody else that came up with a game plan, it ran through Vince for final approval. Is that a fair statement, Bruce?
Everything.
Yeah, I mean,
now
the same way. It's the same way today.
Yeah, I would assume it is. I mean, I haven't been there, but I would assume. I still hear everything, and you can tell when Vince McMahon has his fingerprints on things.
Yeah,
and it still to this day feels that he's given the nod.
Yeah,
and you look at every writer, booker, whatever you want to call them, creative person. I don't know what the hell they call them these days. You have good runs, you have bad runs, and I think, knock on wood, for the most part, I had some pretty good runs for different periods of time. I had some that there was a period during the Vince's federal trial that we couldn't bring in any talent because Vince didn't feel that it was fair to the talent with his future unknown to bring somebody in and ask somebody to sign a contract with us when he didn't know what was going to happen with him. And so we were handcuffed and handicapped considerably because here's your roster. We've got to be real careful what we do here. We can't upset the parent teachers council, or I don't know whatever the hell they were, the PTC. And we had to be very careful with everything that we did. So it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Yes, we had